Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Silver Lyming. Again, for those of you who are just joining us, I've created this podcast to help to share stories of those who have healed or found strength in healing through their journey with Lyme and illness. I really found so much power hearing these types of stories when I was sick and working on healing myself, that I felt that it was just a good thing to give back to the community. And again, not everybody necessarily always comes out in the end fully healed, but there are certain things that I like to highlight that I think can help people to heal. And my guest today is one of those people that I feel really has come full circle with her healing and has a lot of good insight to share with us on some things she helped herself change that ultimately ended with her being able to reclaim her life and get better from Lyme and tick-borne illness. So for those of you who are not familiar with our guest today, joining me, I have Lorrie Dwyer. I've known you now for quite a few years through social media and seen you come through a lot of different things. And it's just been a pleasure to see your journey. As we were talking a little bit off camera here, we were just saying how much it's been of a process to get to where you are now and the evolution that you've come through. And if you don't mind, if you could share a little bit more with my listeners, with our listeners, about you and your story, because I just think it really highlights a lot of things that maybe don't get spoken of enough when it comes to healing, and partially something that I'm incredibly passionate about, which is having to do more with the spiritual side or the emotional well-being side of this journey, and not just so much the physical side of what you can do to help your body.
Hi, Ann. Yeah. I got Lyme disease. I remember it clearly because I was in the hospital on my son's birthday. Connor, it's May 30th, 2019 is when I was diagnosed. I had been really, really sick for months prior to that. And I was getting so sick that I think it was like that weekend before, I was having, as you know, all kinds of crazy symptoms and things they couldn't figure out. And they told me back then anywhere from menopause to stress to the flu. It just wasn't getting better. And I lost my ability to walk. So that weekend, my ex boyfriend and he had worked. I was very lucky. I do have to say this about him. He had worked medical malpractice in that field. So there was like 2 weekends prior to me being admitted where we literally would make it our mission. We would go to each hospital because we knew, one hospital wasn't good. So we went from one to the next until I was like, they're going to have to do something. And we did finally get me admitted. And it was because I couldn't walk. So yeah, it was a time to that's the thing with Lyme disease. You don't just get sick. Then you're slapped in the face that you can't get help, especially women. I truly believe this, and I hate to say it, but we are kind of, poo-pooed, that, it's stress or, it's your period or whatever, but they really don't take it seriously. I know in my state, they don't. In fact, I was told that my state, which, can I say the state?
Oh, sure.
Florida. I was told right to my face that Florida doesn't have Lyme disease, even though my test was positive. And they're like, maybe you got it up in Virginia. That's where I'm originally from. So as you know, it's a fight to even get the diagnosis and get the treatment. When you first get sick, at least for me, you don't just go to the doctor like you have something wrong and get better. You are fighting for your life and you're declining as you're trying to get help, at least for me.
Yes. And so you're making me think about when you, in 2019, lost the ability to walk. Was your set of symptoms pretty much immediate? Like you feel like you got infected in 2019 and poof, you lost the ability to walk? Or do you feel like this was something maybe that had come into you sooner and has resulted then in that?
From the people. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, that's okay. Like, does that question make sense? Was it an immediate onset, or do you think it was something that was like building up in your system?
I think I may have had it before then, just because of the things I've experienced in my lifetime and some of the conditions I've been diagnosed with. I think my immune system kept it in check. I know I've heard from others that a lot of us have something big happen, a car accident, a divorce, a death, something that happens. In my case, we had moved to a very woodsy area, and I had a very tiny nymph tick that I didn't know was a tick back then, but I had scratched back here and there was a blood dot. And I remember thinking, why am I bleeding on my head? And I was in my closet, my clothes, and I fell over because I was getting dizzy, and that wasn't like me. But I never thought tick back then. I didn't put that together until much, much later. So I think in my case, I was bit by one of those ticks that had, all of this. It wasn't just Lyme disease, as you know, but, and I'll get to that, as it still blows my mind that even today, the Lyme doctor did, but there was not one doctor who said, what else do you have? There was not one doctor who said, do you have these co-infections, which we now know is very common. I mean, mine lit up. I had things that I'd never heard of. But the medical community needs to get on board with that, because we stayed very sick when we don't have to. They have to know. If we know, they have to know.
Yes. And that's why, again, stories like yours are so powerful and helpful to hopefully the people listening, because as we know, it's not just Lyme that ticks can transmit. And there are so many other co-infections that they can pass along. And then also, once the immune system is rendered defunct or lower performing, so many more pathogens are left to enter our system that we don't necessarily have the ability to fight off any longer. And so it's not just something that the tick can transmit, but just other things that it opens us up to becoming, sicker with. The body is just one organism, right? There's good and bad bacteria. And most of the time, if it's in a healthy state, it can balance that. Even if we have some bad, the good is strong enough to keep it in check.
Right. It's too much. It's overwhelming. And that's when I got big on social media. Like, really, that was my outlet. And I'm so grateful to Facebook for that, because that's where I found help. That's where I found information. That's where I found people like me. I was lost. I mean, I literally didn't know what to do anymore. The ERs weren't helping me. They were, running tests. And, I'm sure, a lot of our tests come back okay, because they're not looking for that, CBC or, the Chem7, the normal test they run doesn't show much. And then they get into, I think a lot of us are told MS, or, they go through all kinds of things. So Lyme disease wasn't even on their radar, or mine.
Right. And I mean, I could, in a sense, see that maybe a little bit more in Florida than, say, like here in Pennsylvania or the Northeast. But I believe I saw somewhere that Florida had, like, I don't know, the third highest amount of medical claims for Lyme disease.
Florida is huge. I don't know if I can say that, but huge on Lyme disease. Huge.
You can, because I also saw a place called California, that is another state where they're like, we don't really have this here. And I think they had the fifth highest medical claims.
I didn't know that. Wow.
And so it's becoming, it's not just here in the Northeast, it's everywhere. And so it's really important for people to get that. Like, it's,
the suffering, it's really important to let people, because I see people all the time like, oh, and I'm thinking they may have that. And I don't want to intervene, but it's really sad to watch how sick, someone like me or you gets. It's like something I can't describe. It's cancer. You get that sick. You're debilitated. It's done. Your life's over when you get like this. It's over.
Yes. And I've actually had people on the show that had cancer or currently are still in the process of fighting through cancer and say it's better than having Lyme disease. Like, because Lyme was worse.
You have a treatment plan. You have empathy. With us, we don't know,
It's the invisible illness. Absolutely.
Yeah, I get it.
So then tell me, you have children, like, what happened? Then you can't walk. What?
Okay. With mine, I was in a very controlling, abusive relationship, and everything hit when I got sick, because I wasn't able to do anything. I probably wasn't much fun. I was sick all the time. And I'm sure he was probably wondering how sick was I too, because a lot of people believe doctors, which is what is so infuriating, with things like this. Doctors are looked at as gods, and, with something like this, we need a lot more education. But anyhow, I had Tatum, and he was about 4, I think, at the time. I had tried very hard to keep him with me. Since he was born, I was in a very abusive, my past had a lot of abuse in it. I'll just say that. And my whole life changed. I couldn't take care of him. I wound up, I had to send him to my exes because I couldn't do it. I couldn't take care of myself. I remember that summer. I have pictures of it, actually. Ryan and Logan, they're 16 and 17 now. They probably were 12, 13 back then, but they had to come. There was no one. I didn't have a family unit that helped me, or that I didn't have anyone. It was me, my ex, and my kids. And Ryan and Logan both came that summer to my house. And I had, I remember, because it was so embarrassing, I had extensions in my hair when I got sick. They were growing out. My son took them out because I couldn't go to the hairdresser. I was so sick I couldn't. He took them out for me at the house. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't walk. I had to go to the store a few times, and my ex would, he's big on like willing, well, you can do it. And I'm like, no, I can't. You don't understand. My legs won't go. And they carried me one time, and I remember it was shattering to me because I was always healthy. I never saw myself being this kind of person and putting all this extra burden on everyone. And the carts they had at the store that people use, the scooters. I remember him saying, you can, just get to the door. And I walked in, I think it was Winn-Dixie, I think. It was a grocery store. I made it to the front door with help. And I remember seeing, I don't know if anyone's seen the movie Poltergeist, where the hallway scene, where the hallway just gets longer and longer. And I looked at that store, and that's what I saw. I was like, there's no way I'm going to fall. I'm not going to be able to do it. And I had to use the scooter for the first time. And I remember that being a defining moment, like, wow, I'm really sick. Like, this is not good. So that happened.
Yeah, that would be very challenging to experience, I'm sure, just defeating in a sense, or
yeah,
a big slap in the face of reality. Like, okay, this is not good. This is turning very bad. So What happened after that? Were you able to get admitted to the hospital? Like, what?
Yeah. What wound up happening with me is the hospital, while I was in that hospital that night, they were running all the tests. And I think they were just deciding, okay, we're going to do a Lyme test. And I had been to the doctor a few days before, and they had run the Western blot, which I didn't know what that was at the time. And they were giving me a lot of trouble. You could tell they didn't believe me, and, stressing me out. And, we don't know what's wrong, but you could tell they get kind of angry with you. It's not like, they like you there, at least not in my case. They don't like these kind of patients. Anyhow, I called. I was actually in the hospital room. I was so determined to figure, because I knew something was not right. There's something is very, very wrong. I called my doctor, and I had worked for doctors prior to all this. So I had a pretty good relationship with doctors and their staff. I knew how to talk to them. And he finally went back. He goes, Lorrie, let me see if it's back. And as I was sitting in that hospital bed, he goes, it's positive. It's back. And of course, at the time I had to learn all this, the IgM and the IgG was positive. So he explained that, you have active, like, Lyme disease right now. This is not old. You have current Lyme disease. And that is the only thing that saved me to get treated. I don't think the hospital would have done anything. They appeased me because of my ex and what he did. They admitted me. But my doctor, and it was a nurse practitioner, I may add, not an MD, who believed it, who did the test, who, when I said, I was in tears when I was in that. I was like, I'm telling you right now, something is wrong. I'll give you all my children. I'm dying. Something's wrong. She ran the test, and it came back while I was in the hospital.
Thank God. Thank God.
And I don't even know. I think I was just so, you get in a panic desperation mode. Like, something isn't right. You just know.
That's right.
Yeah. So I treated, I believe they gave me 3 to 6 months of doxycycline, which I was very grateful for.
Okay.
and, you know, at that time I was thinking I'll take this and all will be well. And that wasn't happening. I did get a little better. I gained the ability to walk through that. I think it took about maybe 5 to 6 months. I mean, I could get around, I could use things, I could hold on to things, but it took a good 5 to 6 months to be able to walk on my own again.
Okay. And so then I know your story pretty well, and that I also think there's another component. Well, there's maybe 2 other components that we sort of not.
I was trying to say, like, not okay. So a lot, like I said, I was in very abusive situations. I didn't have a lot of help. I was depending solely on my children and myself. During all that, my ex, when I wasn't getting better, I had already gotten on Facebook and gotten friends and information and talking to people who were guiding me. Thank God. And I heard about LLMDs. I can say that, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And there was one. Now, mind you, in all this, and from my story, I did not have any money. Zero. I wasn't working. I couldn't pay the rent. I couldn't pay the electric. And during all this, my ex decided to just walk out while I couldn't walk. That I don't even know if there was an argument, just be for whatever reason. I had met him right before I got sick. So, and it was someone I knew, an old friend. So I really trusted him. And I was trying to navigate being sick, this sick, and all of this. And I just didn't have the capacity to do that. So I skipped a lot because I didn't know how much you wanted me to say. But for me, it got so bad that I knew enough from working with doctors when I think it was even after I got the antibiotics. One of my pupils was big and one was small. And I knew your pupils should be the same size. So even on I think I was Herxing now. I know that now. And the neurological damage. But even, you know, there were so many trips to the ER. I'm sure a lot of people know. I mean, I was always in the ER for something. Yeah. I would stand up, my back would burn, my spine would burn so bad. I couldn't stand for more than like 2 minutes. I'd never felt anything like that. It wasn't just Lyme. There was so many symptoms and issues that it took years to figure all this out. But anyhow, for me, the abuse part of my story matters because I was not going to get better in those situations. So the Lyme doctor I got an appointment with, and they were in Tallahassee, which was probably about 2 to 3 hours away from me. My ex-husband agreed to take me. I had all that covered. And the ex-boyfriend had given me a check. I didn't have any money. And Lyme doctor, you know, this was like, I have to see them. This is the only way I'll get better. So it was super important to me. And we're on the way up there. I go in and, you know, to me, this is like walking into heaven because I'm finally saying, okay, there's help. There's help. They can help me. And he had canceled the check. So as I'm trying to deal with all of this, and I'm not thinking clearly, I'm too sick. My brain is inflamed per testing later. But so at that Lyme doctor, because I didn't even know, Ann, if I'd make it in that car. I was so sick. I didn't even know if I could make the car ride. That's how sick I was, and dizzy and panicking. And it was just a mess. It was a mess. I had to call my old boss, who, thank God, I had very, very good friends that helped me, and she called them and paid them. So I got it.
Oh, that's amazing. That's because that's something that I think people don't necessarily appreciate or understand enough, is the financial consequences of getting this sickness, because much of the treatment's not covered. If you want more of the extensive, super sensitive testing, you usually are paying for that out of pocket. It's very costly. And when you're not feeling well, it's hard enough to function. So sometimes it's impossible to work, you know, and then you're supposed to come up with this funding that traditional insurance should potentially cover, but it doesn't. So thank you for highlighting that too. And the other thing that I was thinking about, I don't mean to pull you too much into your abuse, but I was also thinking about the mold, right? Like, I feel like you had some serious mold issues going on that also compounded your sickness. And I just like to call that out for people to understand for whatever reason, in particular with Lyme people, obviously it's not for whatever reason, but because it suppresses the immune system, mold is particularly detrimental and oftentimes can keep people sick too. And I know you had a really good struggle to get out of the situation that you were in, to get away from that. And I think actually it was affecting your son too, his health. So I'm so glad that you were able to get yourself into a better space, that you don't have mold exposure happening anymore. But can you talk a little bit more about that and what that did to you?
Yeah, I didn't know if you want me to go by timeline, but for me not to get better, there was an eviction started because the ex wouldn't pay the rent, electric getting cut off. And this was all while I was so sick. I couldn't even really form a sentence to fight for myself at that time. So it was devastating being that sick and going through all of this at the same time. So I wound up going back to my ex-husband's. And during all that, we did find out there was mold in that house. Yeah. So what came first? The Lyme makes you immune compromised. I mean, does it matter at this point? Probably not. But at that time, I was at my ex-husband. That was not a great situation, of course. We had been divorced for many years. And I was like, I'm not going to get better here. So I made the decision one day. I called the ex-boyfriend. I was like, I'll have him get me out of here because I'm going to die if I stay here. Bad decision. But that's when I got into the mold. We moved. He did come and we got out. We went to a home. And why my story happened like this, I don't know. But this home, the AC, and you know the pictures, the AC unit had aspergillus and black mold going through it so bad that you could see the black. And I never knew, for people that I was very naive. I never knew to look for these things. I never looked at my AC. It was a beautiful home, beautiful. We moved in. I was happy to have a space, and I started declining again. So I did not instantly get better. That's why, for me, I suffered for years because I was always trying to figure out, is it mold? Is it Lyme? Well, I treated the Lyme. Was it the mold? And the mold was, we went through a whole, because then COVID hit. So there was a moratorium put. Thank God. I had a home, but if I had to go back, I would have left the mold. But at the time, I thought it was better to have shelter. So I stayed. Yes. Go through all that. I think it was a year. I finally went back to ER because I don't know if you want me to say the symptoms, because my symptoms were a little bit different with the mold. Do you want me to get into that? Or
Sure.
With the mold, I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't get out of bed. I was so tired. My eyes were black. I had a really weird one. I don't know if anyone else has gotten this, but when I could get out to the car to drive or go get tape from school or whatever it was, it would shock me. And I've read now that happens to people. I don't know why. There's a reason. I probably forgot it, but it happens with people with mold illness. I was peeing all the time. I had never peed so much in my life. I know mold can do that. But anyhow, I wound up going to the ER. At this time, I had hired an attorney or called an attorney to come test. We had all that. Now it was a fight with the property manager. So now we had that. And he did. He told me, you need to leave. And I said, and go where with no money? How can I leave? And there were nights that Tatum and I slept in my car to just get out of the mold for the night. We would go to the car, take pillows. The ex was in and out, and it was a mess. But the mold, Lyme was something, but the mold, I didn't think I'd make it out of that. So I went to the ER, and what finally made me leave, they did a scan because I'm crying. I was like, this is not right. Something is, I didn't believe mold could do that. I was like, mold, schmold, it's mold. I've seen mold. You just wash it. What's the big deal? I didn't understand back then, but I was only 46, I think. And the ER doctor comes in. He had seen me through the years now. He knew, me. My heart would be racing. I had a multitude of things going on. And he did a CT scan. And he comes in the room and he looked like he had the worst news. I was like, what? And he goes, Lorrie, you have brain atrophy. Oh, right. That I did not, because they had, been doing testing on me. So they saw what it had in the past. And he goes, you did not have this 6 months ago. So the mold, I know for a fact, caused brain atrophy, which, by the way, I do not have today. but it actually caused brain atrophy that I have on a scan.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's when you came in, and I think Tate had gotten sick and I couldn't do anything. I had no money, and he had hurt himself. He has, his own thing. He tiptoe walks. So he had broken his legs, sprained his legs, and was in bed with me sick. We were both sick, Tate and I, that's why we're so close. But, and I asked friends, I was like, can anyone help? Like, he's stuck in bed. And that's, when you and I got very close and you helped Tatum. So, and he knows that.
Hello. Hi.
But yeah, so, I mean, it was a mess for years. I reaching out for help, I was called everything from a scammer to, it was very traumatizing, and truly, I have forgiven all that. And I know, and I don't care about other people's opinions as I did then, and I know we all go through this. So I see it every day, people asking for help. And just so others know, the Lyme community, I wouldn't have made it through this without them. We are the ones that help each other. We are the ones that understand other people. Even my old boss, who loves me dearly, was like, won't insurance pay? And I'm like, no, they will not pay for this. They won't pay for the supplements. They won't pay for the Lyme doctor. They won't pay for the blood work. Normal people that haven't been through this they think you're lying. They're like, that's impossible. They don't cover it. You need cash and you need money, or you're not getting treatment.
Yes.
In my case, I'm sorry, I'm not saying that for everyone. In my case.
I understand. And in my case too. I've talked to some people who have been fortunate that their insurance covered it, or I know some states are a little bit more pro coverage with that, but Pennsylvania.
And that we learned to get around, I don't want to give anyone, like, you can't get, God will always provide, and he does. So there are ways around it, but it bothers me. And that's why I spoke out so much, that the masses do not understand that this disease is like nothing I've ever seen. There is no treatment protocol there. I mean, yes, Doxy, some docs will give you one pill. Could you imagine having a cold and getting one pill? I mean, it's absurd. I have no words. That's what Lyme disease is. And you have to fight for the testing. You have to fight for the treatment. You have to fight that you're sick. It's like something I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Yes. And I hope that you and I never experience anything like it ever again, because it is definitely probably the hardest thing. I know you said it's the hardest thing you've ever done. It's the hardest thing ever. Like, to get yourself better, to think your way through it when your brain's not working properly, when you're not in your right mind. Because again, you mentioned earlier, but your brain was inflamed. I know my brain was inflamed. I don't have pictures, but like, my brain was broken.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that makes thinking very hard, right? Like when you're just not thinking normal.
Right.
So
normal part. I mean, I did have some outwards. I think that was another symptom I had. The number one, just the first one, was fatigue. It was a fatigue like I couldn't get up. And that led to Epstein-Barr virus. They found I'd never had that I knew of. And I think I even had old tests where they had tested me and I'd never had that. EBV. That's a big one with Lyme too. We all have kind of the low vitamin D, the low B12. We all kind of share genetic makeup, I guess. The ones of us that get this sick, but I think the EBV was and even the doctor saw that, my EBV titers were off the charts, and I just couldn't even, there was a point where I couldn't even lift my head off the pillow to talk to you. That's how tired. It's a tired that you can't describe. That was my very first symptom.
Yes. And that's my first symptom too, Lorrie. That's funny. But I try to think about how to explain that to people, that feeling of fatigue. And you can't. And by now it's been so long that I almost don't remember it. If that's crazy enough too, right? It's been like, I felt that feeling for 7 years, and it's been now almost that long since I've been healing my body, and I almost forget it.
Yeah.
I think are true testament to healing when you don't necessarily feel those sensations any longer. Like, you can't really remember them.
Yeah, I'm much better than that. But it was like something, there was a time before I went to the hospital that I was driving the car and you hold the wheel and my arms wouldn't stay up to hold. And that I knew that like these symptoms, I knew something, this is not a flu. I've had the flu and I've never felt this. My arms hurt so bad and ache that I was, I think my ex was, I was like, I can't drive. Like I had to put I couldn't hold the wheel anymore. Wow. So it was that I just kept declining. I was like, something is very wrong. And, all these, for me, it took so long to convince a doctor that something was really wrong. It went all the way through my body to where I couldn't walk. I lost that. So that's why, you and I both try to advocate and there's so many that go through this and they're searching this and we all look at it and go, that's Lyme disease because we hear that we all have it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard because I don't know if you struggle with this, but I'm like, stop looking at it through the lens of Lyme, like stop looking at it. But, you hear all these random symptoms that people have and they can't figure it out. Or, sometimes I get a sensation in my body and it's like, I know what it is, but I try not to be like, everyone has Lyme, but
yeah,
half of us do.
You share very severe, the ones of us that it's so severe that, like I reached out on Facebook and what you went through, like, it's so severe. You feel you're dying. I knew I was dying. I knew that I couldn't find help. It was that desperate. I just knew.
10% even.
But yeah.
And then, can you then talk about really when things started to turn for you? Like what do you think really helped you heal? And was there one specific magic bullet? I know the answer is no, but
no.
You know what? Maybe you can just share a little bit with our listeners what helped you that might help them in the end.
For me, and a lot of you saw this, the ex and the abuse, that was a big part of my story because I don't know if I've ever said this out loud to anyone. My fear, I was so sick. I knew I was being abused. I knew that this was not normal behavior to treat me like that, especially being so sick. And it crushed, honestly, my spirit because I couldn't understand how someone could be so cruel when you're so sick. I could not fathom that. I was so naive. And honestly, that I took it and put that on myself and made myself believe that the issue was me. So I was afraid to let that relationship go because I felt like if I did, I would die. It was literally, to me, death or abuse.
Yeah.
Because I had no one to take care of me. And I know I dare speak for anyone else, but I personally know I'm not the only one that's been through that with this. Because you are so sick. And I didn't even know I had that fear inside me, but I was so sick. And I believed in God, and that's where that part will come in. But he was a punishing God. I think I told him to F off a few times. I went to God when I really needed him. But other than that, I had no use for him. He had not ever helped me in my life. Anyhow, that abuse was a big part because so for me, for the next up until, 6 months ago, maybe 4 months ago, I kept going back and forth, coming in, leaving, coming in. And how can you focus on getting better like that? There were glimpses during the past few years, where he would be gone long enough that I would start to focus on me and get better. And I got back to work. I did get a remote position. Tatum and I, my story, we lived in a hotel to escape that mold from the Lyme community and a GoFundMe, because I couldn't do it, to escape the ex and the mold. So what happened that in my timeline, we wound up going to a hotel. How God did that, I'm a big believer in God today, but he did, because I went so low to my rock bottom that it was literally, we're going to be homeless. I never thought someone like me could be homeless. I have friends, lots of them, family. Yes, you can. You get sick enough and people, that's where it goes. People don't understand that you get so sick that you become almost a burden to some. that they expect you, well, why aren't you better now? It's been a year, or you've taken the doxycycline, or whatever it is. That was my story. So anyhow, I wound up working for a little bit. I would have glimpses of getting on my feet. And that's why the abuse was so big in my story, because until I let go of that, Ann, I was not going to get better. I just wasn't. And there was a lot of mold in that, in different houses, and mold is in a lot of houses, I'll tell you, which I didn't know a lot. So I went during all this from house to house, eviction. The ex liked to use money if I didn't comply, so he wouldn't pay the bills. And that was shattering to me, because I was the kind of person, I always tried to do the right thing. I didn't have a record. I didn't have, like, I was seeing the police like every 6 months to get anything. I'd never seen the police in my life. Like, I was becoming like this horrible, it was just all these horrible things happening in my life. And at the time, I could not see my part, but it was because I would not let go of that. And he was going to drag me down with him and use whatever I could do, whether I was working or whatever that was, being in that condition. So for me, I wound up, it was about a year ago. What God did for me, I'll fast forward to all that, was I wound up back at my ex-husband's again. You know, I had nowhere else to go. He had mold in his home, so I was getting sicker and sicker again. And I met a girl through Facebook, Jess, who we had started talking just randomly. She was in my area, and I would see her life and see it and sit there sick in bed. Like, why can't I have my life back? What's happened to me? I want my life back. Why can't I get better? And God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. She called me one day, or texted me, and said, I'm going to get you, how much rent can you pay? And I literally just threw out a number that in my head that, I can work and this is what I can make. She goes, I have someone that just texted me. They have a place and they want to help someone this Christmas. It was 12/1 of last year, almost a year. And I called the guy and his wife, and I didn't have any money. I didn't have a deposit. My car barely ran. It's an old car. Still have that car though. And I met them at the house, which was not far from my ex's, maybe 20 minutes. And I walked in and they said, do you like it? And I was like, yeah, I love it. But and I'm embarrassed speaking. I'm like, I don't have any money. I don't have, because after all I've been through, I'm like, how the heck am I ever going to get into a home? You need security. You need this, you need references, and you got an eviction on your record now. So to me, I was never getting out. My life was over. Anyhow, wound up, what God did was, his name is Randy. He handed me the key standing in the door, and he goes, it's yours. He goes, we wanted to help someone. We knew it was you. So it was things like that happened that no one could make happen. Miracles. And it was right before Christmas. And I even said to him, like, but I have no money. He's like, no, we're going to the bank and we're going to sign the lease. It's you. He knew it was me before I knew it was me, because I definitely didn't deserve that. But that started me believing in myself, my healing, letting go of the old relationship, and getting back on my feet. That's what started for me. And I was out of the mold. That helped a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're making me cry. I'm so grateful that God was with you.
My story God, I'm a really, I'm very hard-headed, I found. And I find a way. And until God did something that miraculous, I mean, really, it was. There were Christmas lights and it was like a Christmas miracle. It really was like a movie.
And we got a dog.
Yeah. But we had been through years of me and Tate of where we're going to live. One eviction, hotel. It's something. It's something what we've been through and what he had to go through with me.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah. And I told myself I wasn't going to cry through all this, but I mean, God sent me angels. He did.
Yes. Yes.
But my knees, on my knees, and to give it to him. I was always going to do it. I'm going to find a way. And I couldn't until I asked him and really gave it to him and said, okay, I had tried this my way. It just kept getting better and better from there.
That's good. Saying, look at you now.
I know. Thanks God. Because I so didn't. But for me, it took a lot for me to learn a lot. And I know I'd asked you before about bringing up the abuse, but it was such a big part of my story, because how can you get better in that? I mean, that would be like a cancer patient getting chemo and then her husband or boyfriend coming in and punching her or calling her a whore or whatever, abuse.
Yeah.
How would not expect them to get better?
No.
How could you expect? I was not. I mean, and I'll have to retract, because I've said this to people. I mean, a lot of people have reached out, or I've talked to people. And at the time, my advice was maybe you should say, because you can't be. I would never recommend that today. Ever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thinking, I think it was Einstein, like you can't solve this problem with the same brain or whatever. Like it's like the same kind of thing. Like you can't get better
environment you got sick in, something like that.
That's right. That's right.
It's true.
And I very much so.
I want to believe you can get better anyway. Maybe God, in some circumstances, maybe you can. And we are all individual and we all have our stories, but I would not recommend that. It was so toxic. My immune system was not going to get better in that. And you don't even, back then, I wouldn't even have said I was abused. I would have just said, oh, he's an asshole. He's just not kind, or whatever his problem is. I don't even know what his problem is, but I took it all on me. And I just know for me, I would have never gotten better in that environment ever.
No. And sometimes I think about why we get sick is what we need to learn to be healthy again, right?
Yeah.
We go through it because our soul has to learn that lesson.
Yes.
It's an unfortunate way that we have to learn it.
Yeah.
But will we listen otherwise if it's a little bit less intense of a process? Probably not. Won't have that same impact upon us. And I watched you grow and change, and it's been so beautiful to see. Like there was so many parts that were ugly and awful, and my heart would break for you. And I know you were very sick, and you had a child with you to boot. Like it just adds to that, and to see where you are now and how much strength you've gained and how much of like a different person.
I can't believe it.
Like, you really are I feel like when I look in the mirror now versus where I was then, I am a completely different person. I suspect very much the same for you, and that you hardly maybe even recognize yourself anymore when you look at yourself.
No. I mean, even doing this, that's how I know God's always working in my life, because I was really scared to do this. I have a lot of trauma from being called a scammer. And that was really hard. I mean, it hurt so bad that when you're so sick, and I mean, I had to go to strangers for help to get out of this, but I always am afraid to tell. I don't want to come off as the victim, because I made those choices. I did. But I'm just explaining my thinking at the time. And I prayed before this and asked God to guide me. And I know that I'm not the only one out here with this story. I know I'm not unique and special. And I'm almost 50 now. Not yet. That 51's, looming, but, you know what I mean? It took me. So I don't want women out there to feel like they did something wrong, because I took everything on myself, everything, the way I was treated. And it had nothing to do with me. Nothing. And God finally showed when all this happened a year ago, and God started doing things. And that's the way it happened for me. He said there was just a moment one day, and when he showed me how he loved me. And I remember thinking, oh, it's the way I love my children. I die for them. I don't care what they've done wrong. I just love them. And that's it. And that moment is really when my life turned around, and I started listening. See, when you change your mindset and your perspective, everything changes. What you listen to, the music you listen to, who you talk to. You don't want to go around people now that are always negative. I don't want to hear that. Like I'm at it. You know what I mean? Like that moment just changed everything. And it just that's why I always tell people, if you can just change the way you're looking at something, the rest will happen naturally. Just change your mindset. I read somewhere, I went through the whole, the doctors on YouTube and how to change your mindset and a habit. And it's 28 days and all that. I did that. I did everything I could think of. But it really wasn't until I gave it to God that he started doing the things that there was no doubt that God did them. There was no doubt. These things just don't happen. There was no coincidence. My landlords today, just, to end the story and tie it up with a little bow, they're my best friend.
Awesome.
Sorry, I don't know. I think I'm walking in. Sorry about that. But it's a husband and wife, and they're very spiritual, God-fearing people. They love us. Prior to Lyme, I don't know if I could say anyone loved us, like really loved us. I don't mean to say that to hurt anyone. That's the way I felt. I can only tell how I felt.
I understand.
Hey, we have a family. Today I have people I can call that I know are not trying to harm us, that I know are not doing anything but care and love us. And I'm trying so hard not to hurt anyone, but that's just what happened. I going through Lyme, I felt abandoned and abused, and like it didn't matter if I died. And excuse me. But sorry. But so that's how it all happened for me. But once I saw God's love, what his love really looked like, and not the punishing God. And I don't know why he did that with me, but I felt it. I heard it. I felt it. And I knew that it made me love myself. It made me see how he sees it.
What a beautiful thing to have happen.
I know, because it was like instant self-esteem, like not huge, but it was enough that got me going.
All it takes sometimes, right, is just a little bit of a shift in perspective and some more self-love, or more acceptance of self, knowing that you deserve better, knowing that, for me, that was a big component. That deservability is what I call it. Like just knowing that you deserve better. And when you can step forward in that power, even if it's just a tiny little baby step, it edges you, 1 inch closer to that direction of seeing yourself as a whole person rather than just as a compartment of self,
I mean, you say it way more eloquently, than I can, but that is what happened with me. Exactly the same. That when you see that, because you allow yourself, I allowed myself to go through that for years because somewhere in me, I thought I deserved that. I used to, on my post, I would be like, people don't get in my position if they have help. How could you? How can it get that bad? But there's so many of us, Ann. Yes. And I don't know why this has been brought up today, but there's so many that go through this in the Lyme community.
Yes.
And it's heartbreaking. But when you start to see that you don't deserve that you really don't. That's the start. That's all you need to start. That's it.
Right. So then you can start investing in self, right? Making self the priority and protecting yourself and putting up healthy boundaries and just, again, giving yourself enough respect to care about yourself. Like a lot of through this illness, I wanted to die. I think you had the same sentiment. And
absolutely. I prayed to him to take me, prayed that I cannot live like this, please.
Yeah. And I think that's partially, obviously, the physical symptoms, but I also think that's some of the emotional symptoms, right? And just the fact that we're so disconnected with self and we're in so much discomfort and pain internally that we would prefer to die. So
absolutely. That was my 100%.
Yeah.
That's why I wasn't sure to bring in all aspects of my story, but I know that so many of us go through that. Because we go to death's door. We do. And we're very sick and disabled, and we don't get a lot of help or sympathy a lot of times, because sometimes we don't even look sick. Most can tell we are, but you know what I mean? And today, I told you before this, that maybe a year or more ago, I would have said that, looked at it in a bad light, but today I'm grateful, for what I've been through, because look at the people I've met. You're a very good friend. We talk about very personal things that I wouldn't talk to others about. I've made the best friends. I have a family now. I have so much more empathy for people with chronic conditions now. I don't know if I had that before because I didn't understand it. I kind of had the mindset too, just get better, go to the doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, like suck it up, buttercup, but we know better that it's not quite that easy as much as you want it to be that simple. And you're like telling us, I've been there. It's like, get up, get moving, go. You can do this.
Yeah, push yourself. I was like, if you want me to push myself, you're going to see me croak right here.
You're going to come push my casket down the aisle because I'm not going to be here for it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The same.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just saying I went through exactly the same thing. Like you get so sick, you don't care. You're like, just take me if it's going to be this bad. I remember laying in the bed one time, my ex is hearing the kids scream and, they're fighting and I couldn't do anything. I was so sick. I could barely get my voice. There was a time that too, where my voice would be raspy. That was from the Lyme. I don't know what that was all about, but I went through a time with that too, where I'd lose my voice in the Lyme. So I couldn't even I just felt so helpless. Right? And that was one of the moments where I told God, just take me. I said, I can't take it. I everything around me is just falling. Like I just saw the whole thing burning down. And I'm literally so sick. I'm laying there and I can't even reach out a finger to help. I'm just laying there like, just take us all. We can't do this anymore. So it gets bad.
Yeah. And you're making me think about one kind of final point. I think we could drive home a little bit too, is that I feel like no one else is going to come do this for you, right? This is the stuff that you've got to do for yourself. And this is the work that you've got to do for yourself. And that's one of the hardest things about this, is that you've got to come clean with self and look squarely at self and acknowledge who you are as a person. Nobody can do that for you. And as much as you want someone to come and help you, you've got to help yourself. And that's what you've done, right? Like you've really turned within yourself to see yourself in a completely different way, that you can relate to yourself in a much healthier way that then extends itself to every area of your life. And I think that's really kind of what we could get at, is like, you can't wait for someone else to come and do this hard stuff for you. You've got to do it yourself. And it might be messy. It might be ugly. You have no direction book. No one's telling you how to do it, but there is always someone with us, always. And no matter what, the constant is there, and that is God. And
that's right.
You've gone through a similar relationship that I've gone through. I was so mad at God for the longest time when I was sick. I had such a hard time even going to church. Like seeing Jesus on the cross would just make me angry because I was so sick and I couldn't understand why he was making me suffer so horribly. And like, I've turned that relationship so much now. And it's like, I love God so much. And I acknowledge that without his help, I wouldn't be here anymore. Like I wouldn't have survived those super dark moments. And I'm just grateful that you've also come to that conclusion. And so many of us have, is that we don't do this alone. Like we've got to do the hard part, but we do it with the help of God. And God will show us if we give him our trust and our faith, let go.
And sometimes you don't even know in that moment. And this is how I know this is God inspired. I told you I prayed before this because you said that, because you jogged my memory. There was a time during all that with the ex, and I can't do it alone. There was a time where I said, and this was the moment, there was a turning point in this, because it was when I think I left the mold and went to the hotel. But when I finally said to myself and believed it and said, no one is coming to save you. No one's coming to save you. And you send up a prayer, and, I may not have known in that moment that God was doing it. But when you look back, you see that there was no one else but God doing it, because I certainly did not have the strength to do that. How I did any of that, I still don't know. I was not the type of person to ask for help and go on a public forum and embarrass myself. I mean, there were so many times, as you know, where, you don't even have pride. Like you got nothing. You're like, screaming, someone help me, and hoping someone hears it. And thank God we have the phones, because when you're in bed and can't get up, that's all I had. That was my only way out of that house at the time. But, to get back on the God thing, when that is exactly what happened to me, and you triggered my memory. There was a moment where I said, no one's coming to save you. You better get up. You got to push through. You got to figure out a way to get strength. And that's when you find God. Because as we discussed, when you have no one to go to, you're going to call on God. We all are. all of us in those moments, even if you don't believe, because we all somewhere believe, there's something, no matter what you call that. But for me, Jesus, but there was no doctor, no family member, no boyfriend, nothing. And that is when I went to him with an open, sincere heart. And that busted wide open. Somehow we got through. And when you look back, you can see where he was. You can see where he carried you. You can see it. And then it gets stronger and stronger. And today, I told you the Blue Jays started today. I have God moments all the time. It freaks me out. I'm like, come on. So it has made my faith, huge.
What a beautiful gift. And so that's, I feel like we've kind of talked about this the last couple minutes, but my favorite question in a sense to ask people is, what is the best thing that's happened to you as a result of getting Lyme and tick-borne illness? Because I want people to understand it's not all horrible, right? Like it's little dark moments and plenty of times again that you're wished to be taken off the earth sooner than you need to be. But
it's hard. And we had discussed prior to this, I know it's not on the tape, but about if, some of us go through really hard battles in life. And I have come to learn that if you have a really hard battle, you have a very big purpose. That's a fact. So know that, number one. Number two is that if they were to tell us before, if someone would have came to me in 2018 when my life was great, I thought, and said, here's what's coming, I would have been like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. I'm out. I give up. Because it is a lot. But what people have to understand is it's a journey. I know when people say that because I used to hear it. I'm like, oh, hush with your journey. I don't give a crap about your journey. We're all on a journey. But it really is. It's so cliche. You find yourself. You find your strength. I found everything going through this. My family, my friends, my real friends. I mean friends that I know I can call and they're going to be here. They're going to show up for me. I didn't have them before. I mean, I did. I had some friends. I mean, I was very lucky. That's not true. I did. I've always had very good friends, but you know what I mean? You find yourself, you're a creator, you find your purpose. I would never want to go back to before it. I don't want to be that girl, scared and so full of fear and feeling helpless. And I don't feel that way today. And I have so much faith that I know that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. Because it was all laid out prior to me ever knowing anything about it. So I just take it day by day. But I mean, I'm so happy you touched on that. And that's how I know he's with us in this podcast, because I told you I didn't plan any of this. I'm nervous as all heck. But yeah, I had that same moment. When you realize no one's coming to save you, go to God. And really all you got to do is give up a little prayer. He's going to show you. He will show you. It may take a minute. And he loves coming at the last minute. He does. I'll tell you that. But he will be there. That's a fact. Yeah. He will. I've watched him do it many, many times in my life. And like you said, I haven't gotten to now, but my life is beautiful now. Yes. I can really say that instead of just writing the word happy, I feel happy. I feel joyful. And people that know me see it. They see the light. Like you told me. It's not just a word I'm saying. It is something I feel. And it's very hard to describe to people. The word that I can come close to is joy. And that doesn't even describe it some days. I'm so happy. I'm like, what are you happy about? Tatum, what do you tell me? What do I always do now that you say I'm doing? You say you're doing it. No, blushing. He Tatum will walk by me and he goes, you're blushing. I'm like, blushing? Just because I don't want to, because I'm so happy. And if you would have asked me, I didn't know what happy meant. I thought I knew what happy meant. Never came close. So yeah, it's transforming. And I know I'm not the only one that's gone through this journey and felt that. So there is hope. There's a lot of, in fact, hope is all we have. I remember going through all this. I don't know if it's a doctor or someone who said something, but it was about, I was like, if you take hope, That's all I have. That's it.
That's right.
So hope is huge. And I know, you don't want me to go do it again, but there is someone there that you can call on. And that's all you got to do. The rest will come. Just hold on. The rest comes. And we have a great Lyme community. We do. I'm very proud of our community.
Me too.
Even with differences. I mean, we know. So we all do help each other. And I know I can always call on you guys, or I'm experiencing it. Because as you know, we always have something, even healthy, we got to keep our immune systems up. And we have a very good support system with our community. I've made amazing friends in the Lyme community. Truly.
Me too, which is one of the best blessings.
You're one of them. I told you I would have not done this. And I love the way God did that because I trust you. I know you.
Thank you.
So I love how that worked out.
Me too, because this is such a beautiful time spent together. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah. I'm sorry it was so long. I thought it was going to be like 10 minutes. And I didn't mean to keep going on and on. I'm sorry about that.
You did exactly what I wanted you to do. This was perfect. I really do appreciate it. I'm so excited to share this with people.
Me too.
I love this story. I love seeing you. I love knowing how far you've come. And
we'll get together soon. I can feel it's going to happen. We're going to get together.
That's right. I'll be down there very soon, actually. So
I know. I'll even drive down. So just text me. I ain't driving nowhere.
Perfect. You can ride along. You don't have to do the drive and tape.
Right. Yeah. We love you, honey.
And you, I love you very much. And I'm so proud of you. Keep going.
Thank you. You too. You were a light for me. You showed, the ones ahead of us, hold on to those because they're going to show you the way.
And vice versa. You're paying it back to me now with your joy and love. And it's beautiful. So thank you.
We love you.
Yes. Have a really good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.